Abdullah the Butcher was one of the first truly violent and hardcore wrestlers. He started wrestling in the late 1950s at the age of 17 and competed across the world and for a number of major companies. Because of the violent nature of his character, Abdullah's forehead became significantly scarred due to him cutting himself so he could bleed during matches. Not only that, but Abdullah wrestled for several decades, finally retiring when he was in his late 60s. Unfortunately, this came with a cost. After hanging up his boots, Abdullah became handicapped and was confined to a wheelchair. Because of this, he needed daily assistance just to live. Things got even more serious when, in 2024, the WWE Hall of Famer was hospitalized due to intestinal issues. Thankfully, there was positive news. In March 2025, Abdullah began working with Diamond Dallas Page and underwent a lot of positive physical health improvements. Not only had Abdullah lost a substantial amount of weight, but he's now able to raise his arms above his head and dress himself, things he was unable to do before. While that was a positive change, this next individual sadly changed for very bad reasons. In the 1990s, Sunny was WWE's most popular female talent. In fact, despite never wrestling, she was the most downloaded celebrity of 1996. While everything in front of the cameras was sunshine and rainbows, behind the scenes was a different story. Allegations of Sunny cheating on her boyfriend, the late Chris Candido, with other wrestlers were rampant, in addition to her overall not being liked amongst her colleagues. However, Sunny's career and life would really go downhill after she left WWE. Throughout the 2010s, Sunny would be in and out of jail, mostly for substance abuse and driving under the influence. The WWE Hall of Famer did not make things better for herself, as she frequently violated her probation terms and missed court dates. Sadly, someone else would pay for Sunny's poor decisions. In March 2022, Sunny was driving in Volusia County, Florida, when she crashed into another vehicle. The man inside the car was killed, while Sunny sustained minor injuries. This ultimately resulted in Sunny being sent to prison for 17 and a half years. Videos and pictures of the court proceedings showed just how much Sunny's reckless and poor choices had affected her health. In fact, many fans couldn't believe she was the same wrestling star they grew up watching. Batista received a similar reaction when fans saw how much he had changed. Batista was nicknamed the Animal, and for good reason. The man had arms the size of tree trunks. This is no doubt one of the reasons Batista became a multi-time world champion. Even during his final match in 2019, Batista still had a pretty impressive physique and size. However, now that Batista is solely focusing on acting, the Animal has changed. Batista has slimmed down significantly from when he was a WWE superstar. In fact, the former world champion dropped over 100 pounds. Batista did this because he wasn't getting as many acting roles because he simply was too big. The Animal also added that since losing weight, he feels better emotionally and more natural on camera. This next wrestler, though, has changed so much, you won't believe who it is. Watch this clip and see if you can guess which former WWE wrestler this is.
I've got some awesome stuff for you here. So, WWE Warm.
Did you figure it out? This is Tough Enough Season 2 winner Jackie Gayda, aka Miss Jackie. Her time in WWE was short-lived, being part of the company for 3 years. She might be best remembered for having possibly the worst match in WWE history against Trish Stratus. After being released in 2005, Jackie continued to wrestle on the independent scene for a few more years. For the most part though, Miss Jackie kept a pretty low profile, choosing to focus on ventures outside of wrestling. However, in late 2023, Jackie posted a video sharing that she was selling ring-worn gear. Her skinnier physique and brown hair surprised fans and got them talking on social media. Funny enough, another wrestler caught fans by surprise when he grew out his hair. The icon Sting has pretty much kept the exact same look ever since he started dressing in black and wearing white face paint in 1996. That's why it was so surprising when fans attended a convention in April 2025 and saw Sting with a beard. Additionally, Sting's hair was noticeably lighter than how he usually had it. The look caught so many people off guard, they thought it might actually be Scott Steiner under that face paint. However, this next wrestler underwent the most drastic change out of anyone in this video. Tyler Reks debuted in 2009 on ECW with the persona of a California surfer. Reks would have a mostly off and on career, occasionally having a moment before being brought back down to obscurity. In August 2012, Tyler Reks left WWE, citing a desire to spend more time with family. After several years away from wrestling, the former WWE star would re-enter the spotlight. In September 2020, Reks came out as a trans woman to her wife, and Reks then went public several months later.
It was this moment of realization where I had been presenting female with my wife in the evenings. It started when I was about 36, and so pandemic, I was 41, and it was becoming this everyday thing. And one night, I went to take off hair and makeup, and it was painful emotionally. I didn't want to take off the hair and the makeup.
Tyler's wife said she wasn't physically attracted to her anymore, and the two divorced, although they still remain the best of friends. When René Duprée arrived in WWE, he seemed to be a prodigy. He was signed at 18 years old and won his first championship at the age of 19. This made him the youngest person to win a title in WWE at that point. However, in 2007, Duprée asked for his release from WWE. Since then, René Duprée has continued to wrestle, but his look has changed. One half of La Resistance noticeably added several tattoos to his body, in addition to growing out and darkening his hair. He also appears to have an even more toned and shredded body than what he had while in WWE. This other wrestler, though, had the opposite effect. Arguably, one of the best looking wrestlers of the 1990s was Ahmed Johnson. The man had a physique rivaling the biggest names in wrestling, so it's unsurprising that he was pushed very fast. Within a year, Johnson made history by becoming the first African American Intercontinental Champion. It was clear that Ahmed was on his way to being a main event star. However, due to family issues and allegedly some racial tension backstage, Johnson left WWE in early 1998. About a year later, Ahmed Johnson debuted in WCW. While he was still a powerhouse, Johnson had noticeably put on weight. This actually became an issue, and the former WWE wrestler was released from WCW because of it. Ahmed Johnson competed for a few more years until retiring in 2003. Since he's no longer an active wrestler, Ahmed Johnson is not in ring shape and looks incredibly different compared to his days as a WWE superstar. Thankfully, Ahmed Johnson can still walk on his own. This next wrestler sadly cannot. Lex Luger was the living definition of a bronze god. Luger was a bodybuilder before debuting in WWE, and it paid off as WWE tried to make him the next Hulk Hogan. That unfortunately never happened, although Luger still went on to have a successful career. Even as he got older, Lex still had a very good body, but a freak accident would alter Luger's life forever. While on a plane, Luger had difficulty moving his neck. When he tried to adjust himself, things became worse and he suffered temporary paralysis. It was later found out that Lex had pinched a nerve and cut off his blood flow. After spending roughly a year in a hospital bed, Luger's health would improve. Eventually, Lex Luger could walk and drive independently, and it seemed like the former WWE wrestler was back to his normal self. Sadly, this wasn't the case. Over the next few years, Lex's health deteriorated. He began needing a wheelchair to move around, and by 2021, Luger was completely unable to walk on his own. However, in February 2025, a heartwarming video would be shared. Lex Luger had begun working with Diamond Dallas Page and Page's program, DDP Yoga. A video was posted showing just how far Lex Luger had come.
On the way up. That's okay. Boom. But see, now we know where you are.
Yeah.
Perry Saturn's life outside the ring is arguably more fascinating than his life inside it. Saturn's wrestling career began in 1990, but he made his name once he joined ECW and later WCW. However, after about 2 years in WCW, it was clear that Saturn's success there was limited. So, in January 2000, Saturn, along with Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko, all left WCW and joined WWE. While Guerrero and Benoit would go on to become world champions, Perry would sadly have his career cut short. After a little over 2 years in WWE, Saturn injured his ACL and was put on the sidelines. While recovering, Perry Saturn got into an altercation that would affect the rest of his life. Outside a gentleman's club, Saturn spotted two men assaulting a woman. Perry ran in and fought off the attackers, but in doing so, he got shot. The bullet hit Perry in the back of the neck and right shoulder, but amazingly, Perry still managed to fight off the attackers. However, the gunshot wound made him addicted to methamphetamine, and this led to Perry Saturn becoming homeless. For several years, nobody, including Saturn's own family, knew where he was. Thankfully, Perry did resurface in 2010, and he had overcome his addiction and is now in a much better place. Sadly, the drug addiction and years on the streets took their toll on Saturn, and today he looks much different from how fans remember him. While Perry was able to conquer his demons, this next wrestler wasn't, and he's paid the price. Just Incredible has sadly become a cautionary tale about what the dark side of the wrestling business can do to someone. At just 21 years old, Credible was signed by WWE and competed as the masked wrestler Aldo Montoya. However, it wasn't until Justin joined ECW in 1997 that he would really make a name for himself. While in ECW, the former Aldo Montoya was rebranded as Just Incredible. It ended up working, and in 2000, Credible became the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. Once the company went out of business, Just Incredible Incredible returned to WB. While he didn't achieve the same level of success he had in ECW, Credible was still competing for the world's largest wrestling company. However, after his release in 2006, the next nearly 2 years saw the downfall of Just Incredible. Wrestlers and even fans have shared stories of Credible abusing drugs and making bad choices that have negatively affected his health. Not to mention, Credible has been accused of scamming people out of money and even driving while intoxicated with his children in the car. In a video posted to the Maven Huffman YouTube channel, Just Incredible wasn't in great shape, but that's not what was most shocking. In the video, Justin was accused of lying about having an infected leg. Credible revealed what his leg actually looked like, and to see it uncensored, watch the video on screen.